So I ran into, I had a discussion with a group of Muslims a couple of weeks ago, and the question of Aisha's age came up. I didn't bring it up, but there was a man who had come, not with our group, but with someone else, and he was very bombastic in asserting that Muhammad was with this, essentially child bride.
Right.
And I didn't take that route, but I recently read a book about early Islamic history that seemed to assert that Aisha may have made up the youngness of her own age to try to give her more prestige, to say that she had been with the Prophet longer than her the other wives. So I'm just asking what your opinion is on all that.
Well, the documentation is pretty strong. The marriage is contracted at 6 and takes place at 9. Was that wildly unusual at that time? No, it wasn't. As I've said many, many times, you have to. I realize that a lot of people, this is their go-to argument. The number one reason why this is an important issue is the elevation of Muhammad to the point of being the example of human behavior for all people at all times. That's the issue. That results in child brides. That results in the bad stuff that comes from this. But that's a separate question from the facts of the historical record and then the recognition. And this is where, again, the bombastic folks don't care about this, but I care about being consistent in applying the same standards to Islam that I apply to my own faith. And so I think I bookmarked it. I watched a video that was put out by, and it's one of those videos that we haven't gotten good enough to do yet ourselves, but it's where you've got the person talking and then you've got stuff going on around them and graphics and stuff, and it's very engaging. And it was a interesting attempt to get around the issue of Aisha, and it did raise all sorts of questions about how in the early history of the United States, the age of consent was extremely low in certain states, and goes through all these people that had these very, very early marriages and blah, 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 blah. And that is why when I deal with Aisha, I'm either going to deal with Aisha in the sense of the elevation of Muhammad to the standard of all behavior, or the contrasting of the fact that the Quran shows no embarrassment whatsoever about Aisha. In fact, as you sort of alluded to there, Aisha is looked upon as the mother of the faithful because she's the only virgin wife of Muhammad. Everybody else had been previously married. And she, obviously, according to the stories, Muhammad dies in her lap. She is the source of a huge amount of the Hadith literature. She's extremely beloved by the Sunni, not so much by the Shiites, et cetera, et cetera. But what I do then is I contrast that with the obvious embarrassment that the Quran shows concerning the marriage to Zainab bin Jahsh. And I think that's just I'm sorry?
Is that the marriage with the son, the daughter-in-law?
The daughter of Muhammad's adopted son, the wife of Zayd, who Muhammad had adopted, and so she divorced from Zayd. But it was in Arabic culture, it was considered to be incest if he were to marry her, and so this entire revelation has to come down, which ends up in the Quran, allowing Muhammad to marry Zainab bin Jahsh. There's clear embarrassment. And what you can do is you can go from there into the issue of adoption. And see, for me, that then is a wide open road right into the gospel. So on a very practical level, I think it's much better to go that direction because the Aisha issue, you're dealing with a beloved woman amongst the Sunnis who have already heard every accusation under the sun. And so it's almost as bad as trying to discuss John 1:1 with Jehovah's Witnesses at the front door. They've heard it all before. You want to go a different direction, actually get them thinking. And the Aisha direction, I find just to be a huge closed door. until a later period in time. And so they do have their answers. They do have their apologists. I don't necessarily accept what they're saying, but I likewise recognize that the serious discussion of Aisha needs to be focused someplace else than where it normally is.
I'm so glad you say that, because I used to take the Aisha question much more central, and it really closed a lot of doors.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for your ministry and having. Oh, really? Yeah. I especially with Muslim women, like I did the whole, Muhammad practically a rapist thing. It completely shut her down. She looked heartbroken. I never got a chance to talk to her again. I was very upset with myself over that. That was not the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But thanks to
well, Matthew, keep in mind, I have been vociferously attacked, not by Muslims, but by Christians, for expressing my concerns about how we approach that subject and how to approach it. So mainly by people who think it's the very central thing you should be talking about all the time. So that's the way the world works right now. So hopefully that's helpful to you, Matthew.
Thank you very much.
All right. God bless. Bye.